What's a dirty little secret you found out about a company or service that made you stop using them? Intuit lobbied to keep taxes complex. F TurboTax. Free Tax USA forever. Used Free Tax USA for the past 4 years, thanks to Reddit. I've had some pretty complicated tax things pop up. Never had a single issue. I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, I heard about it on Reddit, too. Finally, had the courage to do my own taxes, for the first time, this year, and I was pretty proud of myself. Free Tax USA is just awesome. Super petty, I know, but Crumble Cookies. Their VP of HR did an AMA on LinkedIn, I happened to see, because they are fairly local, and a few mutual connections. Anyway, she went off on why they were always understaffed in an area, because everyone else is paying above market value for employees, and we only want to pay market value, and hire people passionate about our brand, and making cookies. It really rubbed me the wrong way, because if everyone else is paying more than you, it doesn't mean they are paying above market value, it means you are paying below market value. I haven't been back since. Besides, they also sued another company for also selling cookies in square boxes. And honestly, the other companies taste better. I don't think that's petty at all. Sounds like she basically said the old, "We're not looking for people who are here to earn a paycheck, we're looking for people who want to join the Crumble family" shtick. Zero respect for those companies. Companies like BetterHelp, mental health platform, exploit clients' data and info, and breached privacy, yet they still advertise everywhere. Somewhere in total about 3 lawsuits about it. Edit: I wish I can reply to every comment, but a common ones are about finding a therapist. I can only speak to the US, so hopefully, someone in other areas can share specific info. Connecting with local therapists, through Open Path Collective, EAP, Sliding Scale, Pro Bono, and Pay What You Can models, are less expensive therapy models, wording may vary here. Some websites to do this on are Open Path Collective, Psychology Today, Therapy Den, and a search for local therapists' websites. Many therapists offer online therapy, as well. If you live near a university, some graduate programs, and their professors, offer free to low-cost therapy. If you're military affiliated, Military Wants Source, and a referral for VA community care, will get you connected with those in private practice. Please note, in the US, therapists do have to be licensed in the state you are in. But depending on the state, they may not have to reside there. For example, I have licensure in 3 different states, see clients out of each state, but I only reside in one of the states. Psychologists are a different licensure type here, and have different rules and regulations, so, if anyone wants to detail more on that, they're welcome to. I used to work for Goodwill, and in the back, I saw one of the coworkers, who has a physical and mental handicap, come out of the office of our store manager crying. I really liked this coworker. I remember her as one of the nicest people I've ever known. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that her wages were going to be cut substantially. She stated that the store manager was told by corporate that since she was not able to work as fast as others in the back doing pricing. I asked if she would mind if I asked what they had cut it to, and she said $3.30 an hour. WTF. It turns out that Goodwill has a policy that they can pay workers a sub-minimal wage. This was pulled from a charity site on Google, showing the policy. Sec 14(c) allows corporations to pay people with disabilities a sub-minimum wage. According to Labor Department records, Goodwill pays some of its disabled workers as low as 22, 38, and 41 cents per hour. I stood there and hugged her, while she cried. Goodwill does not show much goodwill towards their workers. Angie's List. Did work for a person, and they left a good review on Angie's List. Next thing I know, I've got a guy from their call center blowing up my phone. He wanted me to pay them to put more good reviews under my company's name, and to steer potential customers towards my business for an additional fee. Basically, everything they say they don't do on their ads. I'm sure it was a trustworthy company when Angie still owned it, but it's scummy as hell now. My mother's terminally ill, and closing her business. Angie's List called about promotion, and she kept saying no. Finally, had to tell them she was dying. They offered her a cheaper promotion. They suck. I put my business on there, told them my area and what I did, and they constantly email me for stuff out of my area and out of my field. I fix computers, I don't set up home entertainment systems, run cameras, or set up intercoms. Most of the recycling bins just get dumped in regular garbage. Edited to add, a lot of people think I'm advocating to stop making an effort to recycle. I'm not. The fact is that a huge number of places where we throw our garbage, businesses, warehouses, airports, etc., do not bother to sort out the recyclables from the trash. We need to do much better. We create and consume an obscene amount of plastic that is unnecessary, and it only seems to be increasing. Former event planner, this is true. Unless there is someone directing you which trash can to put each thing in, it's all going to the landfill. Yes, I've watched workers at the airports just dump all 3 bins into the same one big bin. And I am sure that's partly because no one has the time to correctly sort everything out from those bins. It's mostly all a show. Frontier Airlines likes to post fake flights at good times and charge a premium for them. Then they cancel the good flight that never really existed and stick you on a red-eye they sell for much cheaper and don't refund any of the difference in price. Yeah, you can refuse and get your money back and book with another airline, but you have to wait on hold an hour to do it, and now all your options with other airlines have gone up hundreds of dollars since when you booked. Can they legally do this? Airport slots are predefined. They can't legally put a plane slot in an invisible slot and pretend to cancel. Airports would blow up if they tried. That said, if it's just on their website, what a crook of a company. Qantas in Australia have just been done for this, selling flights that don't exist, knowing they wouldn't happen. No repercussions. Hobby Lobby was fined $3 million for trying to smuggle looted ancient artifacts into the US. It's actually worse than just that. You left out the worst part. They were knowingly a major financial supporter of ISIS for years. That's why they were fined. Because those artifacts were coming from terrorist groups, and they knew about it. The CEO is a big buff for religious artifacts. Most of them from the Middle East. They get sold because ISIS was looting the areas they took over. This is actually one of the major ways organizations like ISIS and the Taliban make money. There was an expert who was contacted by Hobby Lobby asking for advice on this before they were caught. According to them, Hobby Lobby had no interest in trying to avoid funding terrorism. They were just trying to see how they could evade detection. The person told them, "It is nearly impossible to guarantee you aren't funding terrorism if you buy this on the black market." They did it anyway. So, we know for a fact they knew about it before they did it. They also refused to let their insurance pay for employee birth control and didn't close during COVID because God would protect them. DoorDash keeping drivers' tips for themselves. Also, they charge horrendous fees and keep most of it for themselves. They pay Dashers $2 to $2.50 per order if it's 1 mile or 10. They expect customers to tip to make the difference. They charge a priority fee that's optional, but does nothing. They overinflate their estimated times to make people pay that priority fee. They stop sending drivers orders if they decline too many that aren't profitable. In some markets, they hid the tip amounts, so drivers have to gamble if it'll be worth it or not. There is way more. They are shit. Screwing drivers and customers every chance they get. There's a super expensive artisanal ice cream shop in my city. They pride themselves on their fresh, genuine ingredients. My mom has celiac, and I wanted to take her there, so I asked for a full ingredient list of their ice cream. They really didn't want to give it to me, but it's law, and it's gluten-friendly wasn't good enough. There is zero real cream. It's all modified milk ingredients and artificial stabilizers and flavorings. I will never buy anything from LG. Sometime around 2008-ish, they, like many other hardware/software companies, were messing around with what was essentially adware, seeing how far they could push things to get borderline malicious advertising onto your home computer. Stuff like the pile of CDs that came with your new gateway, the "Do you also want to install X, Y, and Z?" We're going to imply it's necessary when installing messaging apps, or the huge unnecessary printer software suite, when all you needed was the driver. LG went a step further. They embedded adware in the firmware of their CD/DVD drives. Every X times you opened or closed the drive, you'd get a little pop-up from your system tray that served you an ad, pretty much indistinguishable from the legions of adware/spyware your ad would get from clicking yes to all her pop-up ads. Except, nobody clicked yes on anything, and it couldn't be removed. It was embedded in the drive itself, essentially performing an autoplay exploit on a virtual drive to show you the ads, then disappear again. They eventually were threatened with legal action and had to post a firmware update/removal tool on their website. The ad software was called Bluebirds, and LG scrubs all mentions of it from their Wikipedia article every now and then. Went to a small diner a few blocks away from me. I used to go there all the time. They were decent, and the staff was great. Not the best ever, but it hit the spot. One day, I went in, and the owner started going around berating the staff and yelling at them in front of everybody. He saw me staring at him, so he comes up to me and says, "I'm sorry about that." So I said to him, "If I worked for you, and you talked to me like that, I'd smack the shit out of you." Immediately got up and left. Never went there again. I was wondering when a local restaurant would come into play, and I just wanted to say that my friend serviced most of the oil tanks in the city, and he gave me a laundry list of places not to eat. A hotel that staged food on the floor because of lack of counter space. A Chinese restaurant that would reuse oil for an unhealthy amount of time. Just nasty. Stopped going to a nail salon after one of the employees shared that they have to sit in the back room in the dark when they aren't with the customer. ETA, to everyone making this into something it's not, I am just sharing what this person shared with me. I didn't think their employees were treated well from that info. Maybe some would find those conditions okay, but she did not. She got another job, working somewhere else. I was just a customer. Their culture had nothing to do with it. I'm not flexing. Please stop trolling. Not trying to be overdramatic, but that sounds like the kind of shit human traffickers do with their victims, who work for their front company during the day, like seedy massage joints, where all the employees live together, in a pile on the floor, in a back room. I worked in a nail salon, maybe a little higher end than some that I typically see around. If a nail tech didn't have a client, they usually would sit in the back and watch TV on their phones, eat, and if they had time, help with laundry and general housekeeping. If it was their actual lunch break, they could go out and about until it was over. That would be awful, to be forced to just sit in the dark. Susan G. Komen. The pink ribbon is a scam. They wanted nothing to do with my mom after she was diagnosed. A rep basically said, "We are famous for promoting awareness. You are now aware that you have cancer. Our job is done." H&R Block used to do something like this with their tax preparation service. Not sure if they still do. Their slogan was something like, "Come on in, and we'll tell you if there's mistakes in your self-prepared return, for free." So, you go in, they spend 5 minutes looking at your self-prepared return, and they tell you, "Yes, indeed, there are mistakes here." And then you ask them to tell you what the mistakes are. And that's when they tell you it'll cost $75 for them to tell you. There is a small vintage toy store chain near me called the Toy Vault. The owner, Dan, has been ripping people off for years, offering them very little money for their toy collections. He treats his employees terribly. Many toy collectors in the area have their own Dan story. One time, a couple of years ago, I was setting up a pop-up shop to sell a massive collection of toys that my friend's parents had hoarded. We had been advertising for a couple weeks, and were excited to make some people happy, offering great deals on a lot of cool toys. The Thursday prior to opening, Dan messaged me asking if there was a price we'd sell the whole collection for, saying that he could bring a truck that night and rid us of the burden. I said, no, because neither of us had the time, and told him he could come Saturday with the rest of the buyers. He replied angrily, calling me an amateur, and said that if we were serious about selling, we would make the time, and that he knows we shop at his stores. Well, I don't anymore, Dan. F. Dan Meyer, of Toy Vault. Any kind of small, locally owned clothing boutique. 9 out of 10 times, it's nothing but fast fashion rebranded to be a small business owner. Most people don't realize this, and will happily boast I don't shop at Shine, I only buy from local boutiques, etc. The worst, in my opinion, are the ones who claim to have some type of Christian/religious influence in their store, yet their clothing is literally made in sweatshops. I started my own little brand, and asked a local boutique that advertised shop local to carry my brand. Their response was so negative, it caught me off guard. They admitted they only buy from online distributors. Johnson & Johnson knew for decades, possibly since their inception, that their talcum powder contained asbestos. Once it became a problem, they continued to sell it in low-income neighborhoods, because the poor can't afford doctors or lawyers. They actually continue to lobby to stop the EPA from requiring talc to be tested for asbestos. My mother received a metal-on-metal hip replacement. Her surgeon thought he was doing the best thing for her, because it would last longer and she would be elderly when they had to go in and finally replace it. Johnson & Johnson owns Dipwee, who made her implant. A couple years later, the news breaks that the metal-on-metal hips were shedding ions and were slowly poisoning people. The company knew. They knew and they didn't tell the surgeons or the patients, so they could sell more units and then tie it up in court. The revision was horrible, though she came through it okay. She had some complications. Unshockingly, if your tissues are bathed in chromium and cobalt, you are going to heal more slowly. She's doing fine still today. She used a chunk of her settlement to get one of those jogging pools and goes and water walks in it miles a day. I still wonder how much better shape she would be in without the metal in her system. Anything self-service or delivery. If you don't get it yourself, it's likely been contaminated. I currently work in a restaurant, but previously worked for a grocery store. Here's a few things I have encountered. Customers taking bites out of donuts in the self-service donut case and putting them back. A grocery store pickup clerk grabbed a bare loaf of bread, pre-COVID, with utility gloves that are also used on trash and wood pallets. Customers have been witnessed, on multiple occasions, licking the serving spoons in the self-service soup bar, then putting it back. This led to its removal. People sticking their bare hands in the lettuce pans at the self-service salad bar. Someone posted on Reddit a week ago, confessing that they picked up a DoorDash order for a customer, which was a coffee with whipped cream on top. They had their dog in the car, which decided to lick the whipped cream off the top of the drink. OP lied to the customer, saying that the whipped cream melted. Long time back, I played World of Warcraft. A news report came out about China forcing prisoners to farm gold and sell it for real money. After that, anytime I played and saw people spamming the messages to buy the gold, and just knowing some poor bastard was on the other side, forced to do what I was doing for fun, completely killed the fun for me. BJ's Restaurant and Brew House stole funds that employees donated via paycheck deductions, which were supposed to be used for employee emergencies and hardships, the Give a Slice program. This occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic and shutdown. The company laid off, furloughed, and subsequently fired furloughed employees without releasing the funds, which would have been absolutely essential during that time, without wages. There is a huge bookstore chain that destroys the books they don't sell. I go there so rarely now, but every time I do go there to buy something, they ask me to donate money for students who can't afford books. MF, just give them the books you're gonna destroy. The bookstore owner is a literal billionaire. This is absolutely normal, industry-wide, for mass-market paperbacks. If they're damaged or just don't sell, the covers are torn off and sent to the publisher as proof of destruction for a refund, and the book itself is recycled. If the store is small enough that it has a dumpster and not a compactor for paper, at one point, policy was to tear each book in half. Source: worked in a bookstore for a decade, spent many afternoons on the loading dock, tearing cage full of underwhelming novels in half, and lobbing them into the dumpster. It's hard on the hands and wrists. An Olive Garden, in New Hampshire. The manager knew about, and allowed, the continued bullying and hazing of a young man who worked there through the Easter Seals program. For those who don't know, it's a program that gets jobs for people who are mentally disabled. This boy was about 16. He did things like put silver in napkins. Co-workers punched him, spanked, called him names, emotionally brutalized him. His mom figured out what was happening because his behavior at home changed. Management was fully aware of the situation. They allowed it to carry on, All that resulted was the departure of the workers. No consequences for management. So, I don't go to any Olive Garden anymore. Worked part-time for a butcher, learned that the owner never eat his meat, never buy from that butcher ever again. Worked for a family butcher shop, and I ate their stuff all the time. Of course shit happens, but it really can't be worse than the stuff that happens in some factories. I'm now a factory worker, and while we have a ton more oversight, we also have to bend or break rules to get around being reprimanded. I'd say the biggest thing, no matter where you go, is working temperatures. The butcher shop was me and one other guy processing meat. We were pretty fast, but not fast enough, so the temperatures would get above the allowed working temps. Usually just popped it in the freezer and fudged the paperwork. Now in the factory it's batter temperatures. If they get too hot, there's a ton of paperwork. Get QC involved, have to dump the batter or sanitize the whole system, or make new batter. That results in hours of lost production time, which falls on the person running the line. So, high temps don't get reported. We dump ice into the batter to bring temps down. There are days in the summer we add 20 pounds of ice every half hour to avoid anyone seeing the temps. It's crazy. I had a teacher who worked for a GM supplier in the early 90s. He was an engineer who was, among other things, tasked in designing and testing a new alternator. He designed it, built some prototypes, and tested them. They were failing at about 250 miles of approximate use, and he was extremely proud of the design, as he lowered the production cost as well. When he sent the info to GM, he got a message back saying, "We like this, but we need it to fail at 80 miles." This was, coincidentally, just after the warranty expired. It ended up costing more just to get the thing to fail predictably. At that point, GM gladly paid the extra costs. This was his story. He told us in school one time. He said it was also why he quit auto parts design and went into teaching. The guy was a math genius. I'm sure a lot of auto companies do this, but the blatantness of it. I'll never buy a GM car. Cozy Earth, leave anything less than 4 to 5 stars, and they won't post the review. They will also change low reviews to 5 stars themselves. I called and asked and they said they have full discretion. I'm sure a lot of companies do this. I guess they do. But it makes a lot of sense now, with their quality declining, and their reliance on influencers to keep money rolling in. Home Depot is so desperate for new credit card approvals that they pressure their own employees to apply for the credit cards, even the younger kids, who they know won't get approved, just so they can show they have people at least attempting to get one. They just need to hit a certain new credit lines open each month, and they'll do anything to get there. This probably applies to most retail shops, so I don't ever open credit at a retailer. I still shop at Home Depot. I will just never use their credit cards. Salvation Army, apparently, they are anti-LGBTQ+. Macy's cut ties with them recently, along with other companies. Apparently, they are a hard-right evangelical church, founded in the Methodist style, that has openly and aggressively attacked gay rights at every opportunity, in the US, UK, Canada, New Zealand, and in other places. The commanding general, from 2018 to early 2023, Brian Peddle, openly supported Uganda's anti-homosexuality laws. No apparently about it. Stopped going to a pottery studio, because I found out that they were paying the women who worked there less, much less, than the men who were doing the same jobs. There was a woman who had worked there for 6 to 7 years, and was training the newly hired men, and she was getting paid $4 to $5 per hour less than the new hires she was training. She was dumb enough to defend management when I told her about this, so I washed my hands of the whole situation. If your toothpaste says Colgate Total, it is exactly the same toothpaste as any other toothpaste that says Colgate Total, no matter what else the packaging says. Every different type of Colgate Total is simply marketing, and the only difference is the packaging. I'm not sure if it's different for the Australian version of this, but I have noticed, on dozens of occasions, that if I use Colgate Total Advanced Whitening, my teeth have that furry feeling by the afternoon, but if I use Advanced Clean, it does not happen. So, I'm not so sure about this one. I just checked the ingredients lists on both, and they are different. They are also in a different order, The ingredients list must be in order from most weight to least weight. Just from experience, when you see a mall cop using his walkie-talkie to call for other mall cops to assist, because someone is shoplifting in the store that they are at, it is usually just the mall cop acting like others are going to come help him. This was my go-to technique, because I was usually the only mall cop there. Illusion of power, that's all my job was. Local mall has law enforcement agencies park extra or out-of-service vehicles around the mall parking lot during busy holiday season. The map cops move the vehicles around, so they're not always in the same location. This illusion of power is supposed to make it appear the place is crawling with Leos and keep the bad guys away. To be intentionally vague, I found out one of the 3 primary providers for an item my company buys has some serious labor issues. We had some issues with them meeting deadlines with their product, but they were the cheapest option, so we continued. After one past deadline, I decided to look into what the hell was going on. Which was literally just Google. My boss is very apprehensive in seeking alternative sources, which is frustrating as someone in procurement. I printed out the Google and Glassdoor reviews on this company and brought them to his attention. Apparently, this company's policy is that new hires have to work 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week at $12 per hour, for 2 months, before they'll approve any additional days off. I usually take reviews with a grain of salt. There's always some jackass that has a bone to pick after they've been fired. But when a dozen people have a similar story, it means something. This is a relatively specialized manufacturing industry. As you might imagine, they run into some labor shortage issues that lines up with our delivery issues. We'd been using them for a decade, and now they're our second backup plan. My boss doesn't have a significant empathetic soft spot for labor rights, but he knows that underpaying people doesn't make for consistent performance.